welcome to the Q&A Cafe. Relax and enjoy yourselves, but we'll get started. We'll talk, we'll eat, we'll laugh, we'll try not to cry. And,
no fighting.
No fighting. I just happened to notice this before I came over. I always like to put a timestamp on this, so this is September 17th, and timestamps matter with political conversations, because this show goes on for years, and but we are just shy of 2 months until Election Day. But there's also like an epic full moon tonight. So if you're wondering why you may be feeling the way you're feeling today, this explains me. Yeah. No, anyway, I'm grateful to the Georgetown Club. I'm grateful to our sponsors, Georgetown Cupcake. And I'm very grateful to Ashley Etienne and Bryan Lanza for being here. They are very busy because it is 2 months, or almost 2 months until the election. You probably have seen them on CNN or MSNBC or CBS or NBC or all over the place right now because they're in a lot of demand. I'm going to let you tell your own stories, but I will just say this: Ashley's a Democrat and Bryan's a Republican, so we've established that. But this is the closest I think I've come doing the Q&A that's to my other world, you know, the world that I do out there, like at Face the Nation and whatnot, because my relationships with both of you are really born from my other work.
100%.
And while I've known Bryan longer, I met him, actually the first time we met was over the phone. It was 2016 when he was one of the relatively small staff of the Trump campaign. And I first met Ashley when she was a senior advisor to Speaker Pelosi. And what year was that? We went up, Margaret Brennan came up to do an interview at your office.
And Margaret had just had her baby, I think.
Yeah, but that was, I don't know, obviously 4 years ago, right?
Absolutely, maybe it was 18.
I was going to say 18.
That sounds about right.
But anyway, but so they.
Your mind is so interesting to me.
Well, it's because we were trying to schedule interviews with the White House when she was on maternity leave. Like, I remember
it was definitely 18.
Everybody was in shock. It's like, where is she? It's like,
these are the things that you can't say when you're in boxes on CNN.
Yeah. Yes.
But they really are. They've become friends. I mean, they're part of the fabric of my work, but they've become friends, and it's been so fun for me to watch you both doing what you do, and I'll let you describe what you do. On the cable shows. And lastly, I'll say the other thing I like about having you and having us do this is I think this is the perfect example of a vestige of Washington that I think we still have when we can sit with each other and get along and be friends and then go on TV and duke it out.
And then be friends after it's over, right?
After.
And have a beer together.
It used to be the standard. Now we're lucky when we find it. But anyway, I'll just start with you, Ashley, because A is in Ashley.
Ladies first.
There
Ladies
you go.
first. And
I
think today the Democrats are ahead in the polls also, so we'll go with that too. But tell us what you do now and how you got here.
Okay, so thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You look lovely, as I said before. So, hello everyone. My name is Ashley Etienne. I am originally from Houston, Texas. I currently am a CBS News political contributor. I have my own firm where I do consulting. I mostly consult CEOs in crises, so like Mary Barr during the strike was one of my clients. I'm also a senior advisor at a global firm called Weber Shandwick. So the way my journey to Washington was, I'm not gonna tell you everything, but long story short, young person, maybe the age of 8, we went in from the suburbs to the city, and I asked my father, why do these people live differently than we live? And he said, there's a lot of factors, mostly it's decisions that are made for them in Washington, D.C. And the phrase that stays with me most is the for them part of it. And somehow that just rubbed me the wrong way. People making decisions for other people without their engagement. And so I decided at that point, so my dad said, if you want to change things, you need to go to Washington. So I was on this path to go to Washington, and my parents knew no one. They didn't write any checks. Like, they just were not engaged. first generation college graduate. And I decided after I did a quick little stint in the Texas State Legislature, redrew the maps, that became a big deal. I got on an airplane, wrote out 5 members of Congress, told them why they should hire me, wrote out why they should hire me, which is probably the beginning of my strategic communications life,
yeah.
right?
Always.
Knocked on their door, told them why they should hire me, and I got 3 offers. I decided to take the offer of the member who was running as a Democrat for U.S. Senate in Texas. Now, we all know Texas. It's not going blue anytime soon, so I knew he was going to lose. Ken Benson, actually, was the nephew of Lloyd Benson, if you're familiar. And so I took that job, and I was like, if I take this job, which is probably the beginning of my strategic career, people are going to be leaving because they know he's going to lose. And so I'll start as a front desk girl, and then before you know it, I'll move my way all the way up. So within a year, I went from the front desk girl to the communications director. And then after that, I just put my head down and just started to work hard and aggressively. And I was very intentional about putting myself in the center of the action. That's what I wanted to do. If it was hot, I wanted to be in the middle of it. If it was cold and policy and healthcare, I didn't want any parts of it. So I started on this path of doing investigation. So I went to the oversight committee with Mr. Cummings, and we did Benghazi, Fast and Furious, those big investigations, which kind of put me on the map. And if you know anything about pop culture, I kind of was feeling at the time like I was Kanye West 1.0. Before he got a Grammy, I'm like, I'm a genius and no one wants to give me any credit for being the best communicator in town. Next thing I know, Pelosi's office calls and they were like, we've been watching you, which blew my whole theory out of the water. And they were like, would you like to work for Pelosi? I'm like, I want to be Nancy Pelosi. Of course I want to work for her. So that was my first stint with her. Then the White House called me. Obama White House called me and asked if I wanted to go work there. Went there as a senior advisor and communications director for the cabinet. And I did that. And then, our theory was to run through the tape. So we ran, through the tape right into a brick wall. We lost. And everything kind of changed. And Pelosi started calling me. He's like, you got to come back now. Everything's on the line. We got to win back the House. I got to become the speaker again. All these things that we thought were not going to be possible. And I told her, I'll come back, madam, if you give me the top job and if you just let me focus on Donald Trump every day. I only want to do the Trump portfolio. I don't want to do anything else. So I did that, assembled a team. We won back the House despite what people were, despite the polls and what sort of conventional political wisdom was. We won back the House. And I did the Russia investigation, did all the 23 investigations into the Trump administration. Many of them have led to the indictments that we're seeing now. Then the Russia investigation fell flat. I found myself in the speaker's office with a tear coming down my face, and I'm not the type to cry. And she said, get it together. You got to know your power, kind of a dynamic. So I sucked it all up, and then we went to the Ukraine situation happened. The president admitted that he called to try to shake down another president for dirt on on Joe Biden. So the speaker decided we were going to move forward with impeachment. And I, at the time, was unsure of what was going to happen with me because I had been assembling this team, and I was concerned that someone was going to take my spot. So I went up to her and asked her, I said, madam, I want to run the war room. Here's why I think I should do it. And she's like, say no more. We're going to give you the role. And so I ran the first impeachment war room, left there, went to the Biden campaign, then got a call from the vice president saying, your reputation precedes you. I want you to come and work for me. And I felt like I was the best person in Washington, D.C. prepared to help her because I'd worked for the first woman speaker twice and worked for the first black president. So I kind of knew, and I knew the building. I kind of knew what she was going to go through. So did that for a year. Family situation happened. My father moved in with me, went blind. I had a 6-year-old daughter, so I had to leave and basically focus on the people that needed more from me in my life. And so now I'm out in the world trying to figure out how to make good of all those 20 years of working in Washington in the hot spots. So I've decided now on the outside, I'm going to find myself in the center of the action. So that's my story.
And as we go to, and it's a good story.
Thank you.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm like always in awe of you, Ashley. Something I want to say going to you, Bryan, is that you're Texas, you're California. You were the first woman and first black to be communications director for a speaker.
And for the vice president.
And for the vice president. And you were a unique Latino in the Trump administration.
Well, I actually didn't join the administration.
But
It was
Trump campaign.
It was a unique experience. Sort of getting to my story. My parents are immigrants. They came from Bolivia and Mexico. Grew up in a working class, paycheck to paycheck community sort of my entire life as my parents worked up the economic ladder. I think the only interest that my dad and I had in common was when he wasn't working, oddly enough, was Meet the Press. And so we would just connect before football, because football started relatively early in California, thank God. And we'd watch Meet the Press. That was probably the only interaction my dad and I had through the entire week, because he worked and my mom worked. And sort of that bug for news, sort of that bug for watching what's transpiring on TV, watching this conversation take place, interested me. And I was, as a young kid, I was probably always the most well-informed kid at the table with a bunch of adults having conversations. And that's where the bug stuck. And I was a Democrat in college. It's funny to have this conversation. One of my college friends, sort of acquaintances, is now a Democratic member of Congress, and he was a Republican. I think he headed up the college Republicans in college when we were in together. It's Robert Garcia.
Yeah, of course.
And so it's amazing to see sort of how people change over time. So I was a Democrat during Clinton Gore. I remember coming out of high school. It was just after the first Gulf War. President Bush had returned my brother home safely, and that was a big deal for my family. It was a scary moment for all of us, and because you heard the wars of all wars, and the quick success, and then him coming home, also had an impact in my politics. It's like, what am I going to do? And so you sort of, in my family, you felt this rush of republicanism wave through it all. Mm-hmm. But in that same year, through that sort of euphoria of that war, you also felt the economic uncertainty. You had people who were graduating college, you had people who were graduating high school, really not feeling comfortable about the future going forward. And so I remember, it's like, I finally, it was my birthday, it was in May, I was a late person to turn 18, and I go to register to vote, and this is, well when the economic conditions start to happen, you're about to graduate high school, people are having signs on their hats like, "We'll work for food." And
what year is this?
91.
Okay.
91, and I pulled the Democratic registration, and I went all in for Bill Clinton. Loretta Sanchez doesn't know this, but I volunteered for her, when I was in college. You made phone calls. Convinced my dad. At that point, he'd moved up the economic ladder enough where he could make contributions. So I convinced my dad and mom to hold contributions or set up contributions for Bill Clinton, and I was all in. There was a sense of success that took place where you had, as a young person being 18, feeling this economic insecurity at the end of Bush, even though you felt this military might, right? Mm-hmm. And then Clinton just turned it around. You felt. I remember if the Clinton, they wanted me, the Democrats lost me with Al Gore. I couldn't stomach voting for Al Gore, so that's when I switched my politics. Yeah, so that's when I switched my politics to George W. Bush. But I was always active in college, in Democratic Club. California played a big role in this immigration wave, Proposition 187, mm-hmm. which had targeted, illegal immigrants, but the messaging was sort of broader, and I was on the left side at the time. I remember, being at least what it means now, nothing, but I remember being in college, signing a card for a lifetime membership to ACLU. When speech was actually protected, and it's not protected the same way it was now, and it's actually shocking to me to see the evolution of how speech is not the same way, is not treated the same way as it once was, right? And then I just got more involved in politics. I had a choice out of college then this is where the change took place. It was Clinton. It was 99. It was Bush running for president. So there was excitement within the Latino community for Bush turning the page from Pete Wilson, which is a significant thing in California, and you felt pride that we were finally moving away from Pete Wilson. Mm-hmm. And this is funny. I had an internship interview with Senator Feinstein's office in California, and I had a job interview with this guy that my fraternity brother had set up as this field rep for the state rep, Republican. And I did the interview with Feinstein. I thought I crushed it. I did the interview with the state rep, and I felt a little bit out of place because I was still a registered Democrat. And through the course of the conversation, I said, he was a Hispanic Republican, first Hispanic Republican who had been elected to the legislature in 100 years. He was a pro-choice Republican, which I don't think had ever happened in the Republican legislature in California at that time. He was endorsed by the Teachers Association, which is a far left sort of radical group, if we have the conversation today, who they are. And he goes, what do you plan to do? I said, well, I have this internship that I may get with Feinstein's office. That's where I lie politically. I have law school waiting for me in the fall if I'm interested. And this piques my interest because this is the game. We're at the table, we're having conversations. Nothing you said to me scares me away. I'm a registered Democrat. And he immediately goes, well, if I hire you, you have to register Republican. And and I said, well, how much time do I have to think about it? Was my first question, because I was invested in Bill Clinton. And he goes, I'll give you 24 hours. He goes, you don't come across a lot of Latinos at that point in the Republican Party who can sort of walk around and articulate a message, an economic message, which Clinton started with for the working class community. And I remember that afternoon, I got a call from Feinstein's office, internship set. And I asked, is it paid? They said no. The next morning, the rep calls me and goes, you made a decision? I said, yeah, how much am I making? He gave me a number which by today's standards is considered poor. And I said yes. And I never looked back. Immediately got involved in this political operation, which I hadn't understood at that point. I was only involved in the policy. I'd like the policy discussions from Meet the Press or Crossfire. And immediately, for some reason, lucky me, he invested in me as a state rep, and he got me involved in the campaign side of things. So I quickly picked that up. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you watch enough TV, if you sort of understand polls in high school because you're somewhat of a nerd in that space, that I loved immediately. And he was excited. He goes, oh, this is interesting for you. I said, yeah, can you, I would like to help you become the first Hispanic Republican leader of the Republican caucus, whatever that means. There's an election coming up. What can I do to position, and he goes, put together an outline, a plan. Never written a plan before. He goes, you know how to do a plan? I was like, absolutely. And this was really early internet. So it's not like you can go today, just type a plan, and you see a plan, you can copy and paste, or you can chat GPT.
You go to AI.
This is, I still used encyclopedias in the early, at that point. And I wrote up a plan, didn't have any concept of what mattered. I just knew polling, I knew numbers, and he liked it. And he invested money in the plan. He goes, listen, I'm going to invest X amount of dollars in this for these 3 legislative races. I think you have it right based on the data that we've seen. I think your messaging is right. He invested in all 3. In the year that Republicans had lost, all 3 of those races had won. My boss immediately got promoted. He was the first Hispanic Republican leader ever for the legislative caucus there. And that was a big deal. He was pro-choice, and there was national stories developing. So that now piqued my media interest in the national sort of narrative, because you felt that was changing with Bush there. And
what I hear from both of you, though, I'm going to have you continue, is the degree, and I think it's a lesson for anybody who would want to follow in your footsteps. It's the degree of how much you're being led by passion, instinct, chutzpah, and just speaking up for yourselves.
100%.
I mean, you can't be passive.
No, not in this space.
Right?
Somebody will fill it.
Right.
Somebody will absolutely. It's like media, and this. In D.C.'s this town. D.C. I think you may have told me this. D.C. You have to think of it as a shark. Either you're feeding the shark or somebody else is feeding the shark. And if somebody else is feeding the shark, they're feeding you. And that's how you sort of understand media in D.C.
But I'm not a cynic, I want you to know.
I never viewed it that way. I actually viewed it as very helpful in understanding that it's a hungry organism, and it's going to eat no matter what. And you have a responsibility for your clients, you have a responsibility either for your party or even for the elected officials to feed that organism to help shape whatever message benefits what you're trying to achieve.
What lured you to Washington? What got you from California into Trump Tower?
It's weird. I avoided D.C. like the plague. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. My life was good. I worked legislative races. They paid me great money in the campaign year. In the off year, I worked in state government, so I was able to get my pension. It was 9 to 5. It wasn't stressful. And then I would surf. That was it. That was my existence for 12 years. And no desire to date. I was in heaven. And I met a girl. She was here in D.C. She was supposed to move back to California through the conversations we had, and which ultimately didn't matter when you think about it. And she called me up one day and she says, listen, I got this job offer that, as a young woman, I would never have this opportunity. You're a little bit more established because I'm older than my wife. And she goes, I'd really like to pursue this. I know we have plans, but do you want to roll the dice and come here? And I'd had job offers in D.C. for a decade. I helped Senator John Thune beat Tom Daschle. I was part of the inner circle there. I'd worked legislative races or congressional races and successful. And shocking to me, I'm the guy, so I'm not shocked I'm married with 2 kids, but I didn't even hesitate. I said, sure. Didn't have a job, was going to quit my cush legislative job, my entire political practice, which was California centric to all the local stuff that paid really well. I said, sure, and I came to DC without a job, without any real prospects. I called a couple lobbying firms that I'd done favors for in California when I was working in the legislature, and they said, sure, why don't you come lobby? Because I couldn't get a job on the Hill because they just didn't pay enough. At that point, I sort of moved up enough the economic ladder where there was no way they could pay enough. And so I did lobbying, bored out of my mind, and then a friend of mine called me, Corey Lewandowski, called me one day and said, hey, Citizens United is looking for a VP of Communications, senior VP of Communications. Know anybody interested? And I said, sure. I said, I'll do it. I said, can I keep some of my clients, sort of offset multiple revenue streams? He goes, sure, I don't care. Just don't tell Dave. Dave Bossy. Hi, Dave. And so I did it. And one of the things quickly on in the camp, in working at Citizens United, Donald Trump was our board member. And so when he made the decision, I was in the room, when he made a decision that he was going to run for president, he tells Dave, he goes, I need a campaign manager. And I remember the conversation. I said, you're not going to get tier 1. Because nobody thinks you're serious. Everybody thinks you're just going to drop out in a couple races. And the serious tier 1 managers, they want to jump on a race that goes very far because then they get picked up by the others. I happen to have this friend, Dave, you know the person, Corey Lewandowski, who brought me into Citizens United. He's now looking, and the rest is history. And almost immediately, Trump, candidate Trump asked me to get involved in the campaign. I couldn't at the time. My father was dying of cancer, so I was flying home every weekend to be with him. I was dealing with an engagement, I was getting married, so I was dealing with that. And as soon as all those things passed and sort of you mourn, your dad, I called up the campaign. It was at this point, it would have been May of 16. My good friend Jason Miller, I think, had just been hired. And I said, hey, I said, I've shaken all the cobwebs, that there is to shake about your dad's death. I'm in a great place with my wife right now. Let me screw it all up and let me go work the final 3 months of the campaign.
Let me ride the golden elevator up to Trump Tower.
And I went to New York, and the rest is history. And I ultimately was offered when Jason passed on the communications director position. I think everybody looked to me to take it.
For the transition?
Well, he was going to be the White House.
Okay, yeah.
He was announced in December, and I think he dropped out in December. And everybody looked to me assuming that I was going to take it because I was the number 2. And I sort of let it float that way. And at the last minute, I think the Thursday before inauguration, it was one of the scariest things of my life at that time. I called, and I said, I'm not going to do it. And everybody was stunned. And I just didn't have an explanation other than I'd worked for high net worth individuals before, and I know they operate a certain way, and I know at that particular time I didn't want to sort of be operated in that way.
Let me ask you both this, given you mentioned high net worth individuals. Well, you both worked for some of the highest profile individuals of our time. What do you remember about your first times meeting Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Trump? But Ashley, you tell us first when you're first meeting these people that you know from.
Honestly, so I'm a Texan, and so I'd met George Bush and loved him. He was my governor. And when I met Barack Obama, that's when I realized that something about these folks that get on the path to become president, they've got some energy around them. I mean, it's palpable. It really is. It is. I mean, so his presence hit me before he even came close. And he just had that same thing that Bush had on him too. And so that was my first impression of him. And then, later I briefed him for the first time and I was done. And he was like, is that it? And I was like, I don't know, maybe not. Is there more? So brilliant, just off the charts, more prepared than you ever think that he actually is, and knows more than what you think, and has read every line of your briefing document and then pursued even more knowledge. So that's what I noticed about him, is that energy, force field around him, and then he's super brilliant. Nancy, just frenetic energy. She's always forward moving. Mind is always moving forward. She has no downtime, But what I will say about her was she taught me a lot about not just being a leader and a woman leader, but about how as a woman you can be an adoring wife, a doting, mother and grandmother, put your Manolo in Putin's butt, you know what I mean? And none of those women compromises the other woman. And I learned that from her, and I really owe her a debt of gratitude for teaching me all of the things about being a woman leader that I learned. And then I think with Kamala Harris, when I first met her was over a Zoom when we first interviewed, and I just thought that there was something about her that was so real and unique, and I knew she had something special. And I said, if I could my job will be to take this person that I've just met behind the scenes and present that person to the nation. And if I can do that, you're off. And I could not do it the first year. It was a challenging first year, obviously, a lot of growing and a lot of adjustments, and we were in the middle of COVID. But now that person is now just on full display for the nation. And it's so exciting to see the momentum around her. I mean, $550 million in a matter of 40 days is off the charts. I mean, it's unheard of, that level of momentum. 250,000 volunteers. They have so many volunteers, they can't figure out what to do with all of them. So nevertheless, those are my first impressions of each of them.
Put them on the phone. If there's not enough work, put the volunteers on the phone.
I mean, I think of Trump, and I think of the experience you had, because Trump 2016 is very different from
very much so.
Trump 2024. Are there aspects of who he was then that you're glad that are gone? Are there aspects of him that you wish were still around?
That's a great question. I'd say, if you look at Trump and the things that he does that sort of, gets everybody ruffled up with his answers is A, it's always disruptive. B, it's because he wants to be part of the conversation, because it's like the strategy we learned is crisis and conflict, enhances messaging. And so every time we have this crisis that we feel the media has ignored or that people don't hear about, we don't create this crisis. We highlight an existing crisis and frame it in a way that A, that crisis is being addressed, which I think is a good thing.
Cats and dogs are coming to mind.
Yeah,
sorry.
but it's also there you go. It's also extending to the narrative that we want to talk about, which is immigration. So I think when I always look at the upsides of President Trump's in his tweet, I always look at it as sort of a baseball statistic, right? If you're batting 400, for those who if you're batting 400 in baseball, that means you're failing 60% of the time, but you're hitting 400, and that's enough to get you into the Hall of Fame. So does President Trump hit 100% of the 1,000? Is he batting 1,000? No, he's probably batting close to 60%, and that 60% has allowed a guy with no political experience whatsoever, who's never sort of had this political track, sell his brand, his messaging, a brand that's this brand of winning, that's this brand of confidence that launched himself into the White House. So I think you have to look at that and appreciate what's taking place. A, there's a time and opportunity for him. Is he different than what he was in 2016? Yes. The environment's different. I think we are in a more disruptive time than we were in 2016. Now, people were fed up in 2016, but people are, for lack of a better word, they're more broke today than they've ever been. And if you look at, how they feel economically, they feel the country's moving in the wrong direction. And so, the messages that President Trump hits, sure, it may not be, he may not bat 1,000, but he's certainly going to get enough to be in the Hall of Fame, and we think it's ultimately enough to be president.
One of the things when I think of you, Bryan, and you mentioned Corey Lewandowski, and if I'm taking you out of school too much, you can stop me, but some of the memories I love to retell. When I met Bryan, he was, I guess you were a surrogate handler, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm at the time, I'm producing for Chris Matthews at Hardball, and when I came into Hardball, nobody thought Trump stood a chance.
Yep.
All the producers wanted to focus on Hillary Clinton. And here I was the newbie, and I said, I'll do Trump. I'll do the Trump stuff, And of course, much like Trump, my value grew and grew and grew. But Bryan became my daily conversation.
Right.
And as we got closer to Election Day and everything became more intense, the people that I was dealing with most often through Bryan were Paul Manafort and Rudy Giuliani.
That's right. Welcome to my life.
Now, and let me just say, Bryan, the stories he would tell or the moments he would recount in managing these two men always just cracked me up. I mean, it's fair to say Rudy liked a glass of wine, right?
Yeah, it mattered when you booked Rudy. If you booked him later today, we had to worry.
He would tell me this.
Yeah,
Well,
I would
what
just say-
time is the interview? I don't know if he's going to be.
She would say, she goes 5 o'clock. It's like, I don't know, he has a late lunch. But these are the personalities. You deal with all the personalities when you deal with surrogates, when you deal with elected officials. And even today, I'm back on the campaign.
I know just last week.
Yeah, just last
you
week.
rejoined the Trump campaign.
And you know, I'm honored.
We'll examine your head later.
Yeah, I'm honored / you know, not or crazy to be back and help in certain ways. And I'm handling the surrogates again, and it's the same thing. You know, everybody
It's the
wants
same surrogates,
it's not the same surrogates.
Well, minus Manafort
Yeah, minus
and Rudy,
Manafort.
yeah.
But it's sort of it's the same routine. It's everybody wants to go on Fox, right? You know, and I have a list of 100 people who want to go on Fox. You know, thank God MSNBC is sort of not a real news outlet anymore, so we don't have to worry about putting anybody on MSNBC. And then the remaining thing is.
But you go on MSNBC.
I haven't been on MSNBC in a long time. Now I have
Really?
friends on that network. I've always.
You go on NBC.
I've gone on NBC.
But let me ask you this. Does this new job mean no more Ashley and Bryan on cable TV?
No, I think they still want me out there. So we've
Okay.
had conversations with. I'm free to go anywhere.
Okay.
I've done hits already, you know, for the campaign, and they said, "Do you want to go on a panel?" I was like, "Put me wherever you want." You know, we need to get their message out. So I think it'll be a unique thing in CNN where they have, you know, a panel and a representative from the campaign on there, sort of driving the conversation, having a conversation. So I'm very happy and honored that CNN's doing that.
You're both communications specialists,
Mm-hmm.
but you've never had to manage surrogates, right? You've not.
No, I don't do that.
Lucky you.
Yes. I don't have the
great.
patience
They're all
for
great,
it.
yeah.
I don't have the patience for it.
Well, and I also don't know that there was a colorful cast of surrogates.
Yeah.
They all needed managing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you know, we had a lot of enthusiastic supporters.
Oh, wow.
And
He's
You
a
were
communicator.
managing Kellyanne Conway,
Yes.
Rudy, Paul Manafort,
Yeah.
Corey Lewandowski.
the kids were easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Corey
Two in
was,
jail, right? Has Rudy
Yeah.
gone to jail yet? Indicted.
No, but I mean, listen.
Interesting.
I think at the end of the day is sort of what you look at what television was at that particular time.
Yeah.
You know, we were just now beginning to understand sort of the negativity of social media better, because if you look at Twitter was starting to lose its membership or lose its usership, and they were sort of moving to something else. Trump came in and started using Twitter in a unique way, and then it highlighted all the crazies on the left and the right. Like I guarantee you that, you know, whoever's watching this and they see it on social media, you know, I'll get threats, at least from the left. If somebody on the right is watching it, you'll probably get threats too. I mean, it's so toxic where we are now, and that's much different than what it was in 2016. It's more toxic than ever. I mean, I even have, you know, Trump supporters who are enthusiastic Trump supporters. Sometimes they'll knock on my door at home saying, "You didn't say this on TV," and I was like, "You guys."
But you probably also have on both sides. I mean, I find this just in my job, the numbers of people who say, whoever they're representing doesn't really want to come out right now. They just want to sit this out until after the election. You know, they don't want to come on in a surrogacy role or that there's just less presence of the people who could speak on behalf of the candidates. Like, I get the feeling with this election that a lot of, and I want to know how you feel, they just want it over with. You know, they just want to get to election day and get it.
Well, I mean, I think we're feeling incredibly excited. I don't think we're rushing to election day. I think time cuts both ways for the vice president. It's good in that it's clear that the Republicans are having a hard time mounting a defense against her. You know, the more time you have, the better it is. You can spend millions of dollars demonizing, mischaracterizing, or characterizing a person. So it cuts that way. The other downside, I mean, that's an upside. The downside, though, is she's really doing what no presidential candidate at this point has had to do, which is run a campaign of both persuasion and turnout. That is a huge focus. There's still 35% of the country that feel like they don't know enough about her. They still want to know more. Now, there's all these other factors that women, I've worked for the two most powerful women in the world, that, women are held to a different standard. She's now testing the confluence of race and gender. We've never had a conversation about what that actually means and how that shows up and how that manifests in someone's minds. And so to some degree, for those reasons and those factors, it may not ever be enough for people to get across the line. But I don't think we're rushing to the election because I think she needs every one of those days to actually persuade and move that 35%. If you look at the polls,
I don't think of you as the public, though.
Oh, yeah. No, good, excellent point. But but if you look at the polls, the ground that she's made up in such a short period of time is astounding.
Yeah.
In terms of increasing her numbers with our base voters. She's holding white men at the same rate that Joe Biden was, which is kind of unbelievably unheard of. She's made inroads with young people. I mean, every part of the of the Joe Biden coalition that won in 2020. She's also picking up ground on the issue of handling the economy. She's also out polling Donald Trump in terms of the most recent CNN poll. Who do you want to represent you in the world? Do you think that this person has your interests at heart? She's out polling him on those factors. And I think that's actually her strong suit. Knowing what I know about her, I think that's something that they need to exploit and figure out how to further drive this point and she did it in the debate. Donald Trump doesn't care about you. He's been the head of the Republican Party for 8 years and still can't come up with a plan on health care, although they voted 60 times, I was in the House, to undermine ACA. So all of those things I think she needs to just figure out how to
Okay, is this why they're bringing you back in?
No, listen, I don't need to be brought into the conversation if they genuinely believe that Kamala Harris is leading the conversation on the economy. Every data set that we've seen since she's been in the race has shown the exact opposite. Every data we've seen since the debate, where she had a strong performance, some could say she hit that presidential performance level, she's still wounded by the fact that her positions are viewed as extreme and outside the mainstream, and that Donald Trump has a better handle on the community than on the economy that she does. In fact, Donald Trump grew from the debate on the economy question. So. Please.
No, I just said made up gap. I didn't say she's outpacing him, but I'm saying in a matter of 4 weeks to make up, ground
where Joe Biden was at a level that we hadn't seen in politics, right? And so yes, she resurrected she resurrected the enthusiasm in the Democratic Party. She's still short of the Biden coalition. If you look at that data, she sort of hasn't hit all the benchmarks of the coalition. But if you look at the data points, and that's what I sort of look at, I don't want to deal in the other things. If you look at the issues that matter, immigration and the economy, post-debate, Trump's pulling away. And that's because she had an opportunity to debate, to sort of answer those questions on the economy. The very first question it was, and she failed. Just look at this last weekend. A reporter in Pennsylvania asked her, specifics. What are you going to do with respect to the economy in Pennsylvania, a key swing state? I think after 3.5 minutes of mentioning, a person's yard as a specific on how to help the economy, she started sort of transitioning to an answer, but it was still a word salad. I think even the Democrats see that. So she struggles to close that, and we're of the opinion if she can never close that because her policies are actually radically liberal, they're San Francisco liberal, she's never going to be president no matter what performance she has.
We're going to run out of time soon, so I have a couple other things I wanted to talk to you about that are a little more behind the scenes-y, and that is the Secret Service are in the news a lot. They've been in the news now with 2 attempted assassinations. You have the unique experiences of being close to the people who are being protected. You see the Secret Service, you see the Capitol Hill Police in action. Do you feel they do a remarkable job that isn't seen by the public? Do you think that they're being treated fairly when they are blamed for?
Based on what I know, they do an extraordinary jobs and they're heroes every day. They put their life on the risk for an American president and all of our former presidents. That's supremely heroic. I'm sure there's gaps and there's mistakes along the way. those things need to improve. I think leadership will show, we got to track down what needs to be better and make sure that those gaps don't exist. But I find it hard to believe that somebody who signs up for the Secret Service and says, I take an oath to America, and I say I'm going to take a bullet for the United States, is not giving their maximum effort. I just think that when you have a psychopath who's been triggered by, in my view, sort of the vile politics of social media and of the sort of modern era that we are in right now, when somebody like that gets triggered, there's, and he's willing to lose his life for it, that's very hard to combat.
Where were you on January 6th? Were you still working?
So I was really, my desire was to be on Capitol Hill. I was working at the White House. As I said, I like to be in the center of the action. I wanted to be there. But I will say that my former colleagues that work for the Speaker won't go to the Capitol anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still very emotional about it because there was two doors in her conference room because they had already swept her away, so the staff was behind. Mm-hmm. And the rioters were at the first door. They didn't realize there was a second door. So all of my former colleagues were hiding in the room behind the second door. Mm-hmm. And the rioters tried to get through the first door, couldn't get through the first door. Got through the first door, but didn't see the second door. So that's what really saved them. And so, one in particular tells me that she doesn't like to go back to the Capitol because she's scared of the dark corners in the Capitol, that someone's going to jump out. That was a traumatizing time for those folks on the Hill. A lot of people left the Hill, Republicans and Democrat staffers that are not, they don't want to go back at all.
I still think of it every time I'm up there because I've been up a couple of times to do interviews in the Speaker's office and the adjacent majority leader's office, and you just kind of take a moment where you just try to pull it back. In our last few minutes, polling. Do you watch any of it? Do you care about any of it? What are your own personal views on the polling? Should people just ignore it?
No, listen, I think it's important for capturing trends and data sets and sort of helping you develop a message. You want to make sure that you're saying something that's connecting with the audience. And focus groups and pollings are the best way to affirm, that you're on the right page. You got to analyze the data to see what the concerns are, and that only comes from polling. Now as for political campaigns, listen, this is third Trump campaign here. Polling has not worked at any of them. We're always underpolled at the state. We're always underpolled at the federal level, and it's challenging. So when you look at Trump world and say, hey, why do they still sort of feel confident? Is just because if you look at the race and it's a 1-point race and it has, let's say, a Harris lead, based on historically what we've seen, that's a Trump +2 race. So, polling has just not been accurate, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's actually hasn't been accurate, and I think the one thing that's missing is that since Trump's come on the political scene past 16, they've been underperforming it at every election. The midterm election, when I was the Speaker's communications director, that we won, we weren't supposed to win that one. This last midterm, there was supposed to be a red wave. We only lost the midterms by 5 seats. So the reality, and then the last cycle, Trump was polling fairly well and then lost the last presidential.
Second highest vote total ever in American history.
Yeah. So the reality is higher turnout better for us. But the reality is that the polls are not accurate. I wouldn't rely on any of the polls. I think the trend line in politics, what you pay attention to is the trend. Who's trending up versus who's flat. So that's why I made this point that what's positive in what we're seeing is that the vice president is trending up, incredibly up, really fast in a short period of time. That's encouraging. Donald Trump has actually hit a ceiling at 48 and it's not going over 48. If you go to the Wall Street, don't take my word for it, go to the Wall Street Journal, which is like an extension of the Republican Party, and they made the point in their editorial.
Not every of us have MSNBC.
Some of us read other outlets, but if you read their editorial, and they made the point that Trump needs more consumers, that he's now a one-trick pony, and everyone sort of is tired of the Trump show. No one wants a third season of the Trump show. So he's hitting a ceiling, and he's got to find new customers. And the challenge is, which is why there's a frustration within the Republican Party, is that he's one-dimensional, and
Do you think that's why they brought Bryan back in?
No, I mean, Bryan's fantastic.
No,
I mean, I just think.
I would push back. I mean, let's
Don't
look
push
at
back.
poll. Let's look at
let
polling
me
really
finish.
quick.
Let me make one more.
All right.
Let me make
We
one
have like
more.
a minute. So
There you go. So you got 30
One more
seconds.
point about polling, I will say, and this is, I'm going to say to the credit of CBS. When we do look at national polls, the smart people like us, because I really dig into the poll, not the top lines, you got to dig all the way into the poll. And I remember at one point CBS, and this was maybe almost 6, 7, 8, maybe almost a year ago, CBS had a poll that showed that the vice president was outpacing Joe Biden among his coalition that won him the 2020 election. So I took the poll to the White House. Her team asked me to come back to the White House to talk about strategy. And I said, look at this poll right here, okay? This suggests that there is an audience for the vice president. Don't worry about the issue. Over-index with these constituencies. They're open. No voter is a one single issue voter. So over-index with these constituencies. That's when she started to do the reproductive rights tours, the college tours on climate, all of that stuff that positioned her for where she is now to far exceed Biden. So that becomes part of.
Bryan gets to have
Yeah, I get
the last word here. 'Cause we have like
But that
10
becomes the
seconds.
value of polls, is that you can pull strategy
You're used
out
to
of
live
it.
TV.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would add, in spite of all those things, all polls that have come out since the election still view Donald Trump as the change agent. So they can call him old, they can call him all these things, they can have these conversation threads, our conversations with the American people, and it's validated when you look at polls, when they overwhelmingly say the country's headed in the wrong direction, and change is represented by Donald Trump.
Well, thank you both. We could go on, but good
And we will.
discussion.
Well, I
Yes,
will
and
say
we
this,
will.
though. I
And
mean,
when
one
election-
last thing.
Here we go.
No, we're
One
not-
last thing,
I
because
have
women,
been told
we
to
always get the last word.
Please, I'm well
I mean,
aware.
my only point about this, what scares me, is that if Donald Trump wins, it'll say more about the nation than it does about Donald Trump. And that's something we have to examine. Is
We're gonna
this
find
the
out,
nation that we
Ashley.
are?
We're
Is
gonna
this the
find out
representation
in-
that we
in less-
actually
in
want?
less than 2
Change is
months.
coming.
But our time is up.
Bad
I
change.
thank you both very
want that
much.
change.
And you should take it on the road, the two of you. Bryan, Lanza, Ashley, Etienne.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Remember to vote. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.